Hello Divination and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to show you step by step how to combine a scroll progress bar with a fixed navigation menu in Divi. This is the final result we're aiming to achieve. So without wasting a lot of time, let's dive in and let's get started. All right, so the first thing you need to do is to create a brand new page. So I'm going to come over here to pages, click on add new. Next, we need to give this page a name. So I'm just going to call this tutorial. Click on use Divi builder. So for this design, we're going to build everything from scratch. So I'm going to click on start building, and then we're going to start off with a single column. Now, before we add any modules, the next step now is to go into my row settings, because here I need to make adjustments to my width. So I'm going to click here on design, sizing, and by default, we have our width of 80%. We want this to be 100%, and so is the maximum width. So now that we have both of those set to 100%, the next step now is to go to spacing, because what we need to do here is to remove the padding. So I'm going to add 0 to the top and the bottom. And then once that's done, it's time now to add our text module. So I'm going to save this, click here on this plus button, search for my text module and select it. Now I'm just going to paste my text content in here. So that's what it looks like. Now I highly recommend that you just go and copy and paste this. This can be found in the blog post, which I will link to in the show notes below. Okay, so once you head over to the blog post, everything's going to be there. So the next step now is to come over here to my design tab, and we need to align this text so it's right in the middle. So I'm going to scroll down and set my alignment to centered. So now we need to update a few settings. So I'm going to come over here to heading text. Now this text here is heading 2. So make sure you select H2 here. So the first thing we need to do is to change our font to Roboto. I'm going to select it. And we also need to adjust our size. So for our size, we're going to change this from 26 pixels to 6 VW. So now we need to go back to our section settings. So let me save this. And then I'm going to come back over here, click on my section settings, and then I'm going to go to my design. So what I need to do here is to go to my sizing, because we need to set our height. So our height here is currently on auto. So this needs to be 100 VH. So this is going to give us a lot of space to work with. Okay, so now that I've added my height, the next step is to come over here to spacing. And like I did on my rows, I need to remove the spacing both to the top and the bottom. Next, I need to add a bit of CSS to center this text. So I'm going to come over here to the advanced tab, custom CSS. And on the main element here, I'm going to paste this. So now you can see that everything now is in the center. So again, this CSS code can be found in the post, which I'll link to in the show notes below. So now that we have this all done, we need to duplicate this. So I'm going to save this, and then over here now. So we can see here that we can't really get access to our settings. So what you need to do is to click on expand settings, and then we want to go to our layers. So now this is our section that we're working with. I'm going to duplicate this. Okay, so the next step now is to go to the second section that we've just duplicated and click on the gear icon. Next, we're going to come over here to background and add our background color. So I'm going to click on this plus button. So we need a dark gray for this. So I'm going to go ahead and enter it like that and then save. Now here in this text module, we want to go in and replace this text with some new text. So I'm going to paste it in here, and that's our text that we need to replace it with. Next, I'm going to come over here to design, click on text. So here we need to change our alignment to left, because currently it's centered. So now it's aligned to the left. It's now time to add our colors to our text. So I'm going to start here with the heading. So I've just clicked here on this little brush icon. So this now takes me to heading 2, or you can just go manually to heading text and then click on heading 2. All right, so our color here is going to be this color. And again, I'm going to add a link to the post in the show notes below, so it's easier for you to find these settings. All right, so now that I have this, we need to go to our maximum width and set also our maximum width on the tablet. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to collapse this, go to sizing. So for our max width here, we're going to set this to 40 VH. And then for my module alignment, I'm going to align this to the center. So pretty much that's all we need to do here. I'm going to save this. So we also need to duplicate this because we're going to need quite a few of these sections. So what I'm going to do is to duplicate step 1. So I'm going to do it right here. Okay, so I'm going to scroll all the way down and here it is. This is the one that we've just duplicated. So I'm going to click here on my section settings. So this time, instead of adding a solid background color, we're going to add a gradient. So I'm going to delete this color here, go to my gradient and click on this plus button. So I'm going to start off with adding my first color. So this color here is going to have transparency. So I'm just going to drag this down a little bit and then I'm going to paste my values in here because that's the way we can get access to our transparency settings. Next, I'm going to add my other color. So just like how I did before, I'm going to drag the second slider down and paste it in here like that. Now we need to change our heading color. So I'm just going to save this for now. And then I'm going to come over here, click on this gear icon, click on design, heading text, heading 2, and change my color in here. So I'm just going to replace this with my new color. So the reason why we're adding these colors is because we want them to be the same as the buttons that we're going to be adding later on in this tutorial. So now that we're done here, I'm going to save, and we're also going to create another section from a duplicate. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come over here to my layers because the one that I need here is the second one. So I'm going to duplicate it and then drag it below here like that. Okay, so now that it's there on the bottom, I'm going to go in to my section settings. So I'm just going to close this so it's out of the way. So this one here is step 3. So let me just label it here. And for my heading text color, I have to save this, go into my settings here, design. And for my heading text, make sure you go to H2 because this is where we have our heading to. Okay, I'm going to paste my color in here like that. And now my color has been updated and then I'm going to save. So what I'm going to do now is to come back over here because we need to go in and rename these. So this one here is 1. So let's just update this. This one here is 2. Move on to the third one. So this time we want to duplicate 2. So I'm going to click here on duplicate section and then I'm going to drag this to the bottom. And this one here is going to be the fourth one. So I'm just going to label it 4. So now that we have our fourth section, the next step now is to go into my module settings, click on design and making sure you target your main text here. I'm going to click on the color and paste my color like that. And then I'm going to also rename this to step 4. And I'm also going to make sure that all my steps are all set. So this is 4, this is 3. So this one here needs to be 2 and this one here is step 1. So all these are updated now. So let's publish this and take a look at it. So I'm going to exit the Visual Builder for now and your design should look like this. Okay, now let's go back in because this time we're going to create our scroll, progress bar, and menu. Okay, so let's create our menu section. So I'm going to click here on this plus button, regular section, and I'm just going to close this for now. So this is the one that's going to act as our menu section. So I'm going to drag this to the top. There we go. Now, if you're not sure where it is, you can just click here on your layers and you can locate it by just clicking it here. So you can see that this is the one. So I'm going to rename this to menu and then just drag it to the top like that. So I'm going to go into my settings here because I need to do a few changes on my padding. So I'm going to click here on design, spacing. So for the padding, make sure you set it to 0, both to the top and the bottom, because we don't want any spaces inside there. Okay, so now that we've set this, the next step now is to make this a fixed section. So I'm going to click advanced, and for our fixed section, we need to go to position, and this is where we can choose fixed. Okay, so now that we have fixed, we want this set here to the top left. And also we need to set our Z index. So it's important that we set our Z index. So this is just going to allow our menu to be on top of everything. So just add a high number. I'm just going to add 999 for that. And then we are going to save. The next step now is to add a row into this. So I'm going to click here on add new row, and we're going to add a single column. So the next thing we need to do is to go into my row settings. So in my row settings here, we are going to start by customizing our gutter width. So I'm going to click on design, sizing, say yes to my gutter width and set it to 1. Now the gutter width is the space between the columns. Now, just like what we did before, we need our width to be 100%. So I'm going to come over here, set this 100%, and maximum width needs to be 100% as well. Now for this, we also need to go to our position. So let's go to advanced, click on position. Now this time we want this to be absolute. Now, while we're here, we also need to go into our CSS. I'm going to come over here to custom CSS and make sure that all our content is centered. So I'm going to add this CSS code, which you can also find in the post, which I'll link to in the show notes below. So with this all set, we can now go in and save this. And now it's time to add our new module. So I'm just going to drag this to the side, click on add new module. Now the module I'm going to add here is a divider. So I'm going to search for it and select it. Okay, so first of all, we need to add our background color. So I'm going to come over here, click on this plus button and paste my background color. Next, we're going to come over here to design, sizing. And just like what we did before, our width here is going to be 100%. And our maximum width is going to be 100% as well. Actually, it's the height that needs to be 100%. So I'm going to come over here, set this to 100%. So note that we're giving the progress bar a width of 100% here because that you can see it within the design. We'll increase and decrease the width of the divider progress bar with jQuery. Now, under the advanced tab, we're also going to add a CSS ID to give it an absolute position. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to come over here to design, CSS ID and classes. And on our CSS ID, we're going to set it to scroll bar. And for our position here, we just want to make sure it's set to absolute. All right, so for the next step, we need to add a text module. So I'm going to click here on this plus button and search for my text module. So this is going to act as our percentage. So I'm just going to get rid of all of this and just paste my text in here. Now remember, we're going to add our jQuery. So this is going to update this, okay? Next, I'm going to come over here to design, text. We need to change our font here to Roboto. Make it all caps. Change our color to white. And our text size needs to be 16 pixels. So just nudge it up to about 6 pixels. Okay, so we're also going to add our padding. And this is going to be 8 EM. So I'm just going to scroll down here to our spacing and enter my padding here. It's going to be the same value both for the top and the bottom. So I'm going to activate my chain. And then for my left here, it's going to be 15 pixels. Now let's head over to the advanced tab because here we need to add a CSS class. So I'm going to click here on CSS ID and classes. And this is the class that I'm going to add. So now it's time to add our custom code. So I'm going to save this and then over here, click on this plus button and search for code. And this is going to be my code module. All right. So in the code module space here, we need to add our script tags first. So I'm just going to type it here. So these are the script tags that you need to first type in. Now, once you've done this, you need to go to the blog post, which I'll link to in the video description below, and copy and paste this jQuery code. So this code takes care of the progress bar and the percentage text. So let's move on to the navigation menu now. So let's save this. So for this, we're going to add a brand new row. So I'm going to click on this plus button here, and the row we're going to need is going to have 4 columns. So I'm going to select my 4 columns here. So I'm just going to close my module for now and then go into my columns. So click on this gear icon to go into your columns. And let's make a few adjustments here to our gutter. So I'm going to click on spacing. Oh, in fact, I need to go into my design, sizing, and click on gutter width and set this to 1. And then for the width, it needs to be 100%. And the same for the maximum width as well. Next, you want to remove any spacing around this row. So let's set our padding here to 0, both to the top and the bottom. All right, so next I'm going to come over here to my advanced tab, click on custom CSS. So I'm just going to paste this CSS code. And again, you can find this on the blog post, which I'll link to in the show notes below. Okay, so now that we've done this, the next step now is to start adding our buttons. So I'm going to save this. So our first button is going to come over here to the far left, click on this plus button, search for your button module and select it. So here we're going to label this step 1, because remember we said this has to complement all the information that we created earlier on. Button link URL, we're going to go in and set this to #1. So this anchor will jump to the section with the corresponding CSS ID that we'll add later. So let's now start designing the button. So I'm going to click here on design, button alignment. So we want this centered, and then we're going to go into our button text size. So for this, we need to go in and activate use custom styles for button. So I'm going to click here on button and then activate use custom styles. Okay, so our size here is going to be 20. Okay, so for the button background color, we want transparency. So moving on, we need a bit of letter spacing for this button. So I'm just going to add it here, and it's going to be 0.2 EM. We will also want this all caps. We're going to change our font here to Roboto. This is just so that we keep our consistency. Now we need to add our button padding. So I'm going to come over here to spacing, and we are going to add 0.8 both to the top and the bottom, and then 0 to the left and the right. So for the button border radius, we also don't need the border radius. So let's just make sure that this is set to 0, and also the border width. Now to make the button span the full width, we need to add the CSS code. So we are going to come over here to advanced, custom CSS, and for our main element, I'm going to paste the CSS code in here. So that's all I need to do. I'm going to now save this. So we're going to be creating these buttons into the other columns. So all you have to do is to duplicate it like that, drag it over to the second column, and then we just need to go in and make changes to this. So this one here now is going to be step 2. We need to add the button colors. So for that, we need to go into design, button, and we need to go into the button text color and add our color like that. And we also need to add our background color, our button background color. So for that, I'm just going to scroll down a little bit and click in this area and just paste the color in here like that. Excellent. So now that we have our background color and we have our text color, the next step now is to add our URL. So for our button URL, I am going to go back over here to content, and for the link, this needs to go to 2. So moving on, we also need the third button. So again, we're going to duplicate this one here, drag it over to the third column. And we're going to call this step number 3. Our link here needs to be 3. And then we're going to come over here to design, click on button. And again, we need to change our button colors. So for our text color, we're going to paste our color in here. We're going to save that. And then it's time now to add our final button. So I'm going to duplicate this one here, drag this to the 4th column, and then go into the settings. So this one here is step number 4. We're going to go into the link, change this to 4. And now it's time to add our button text color. So I'm going to click here on button. And for the button text color, I'm just going to update my color. So now that we have all this set, we need to add our corresponding CSS IDs for our anchor links. So I'm going to save this. Okay, so what we need to do next is to go into each and every one of these sections and add our CSS ID so that all our anchor links work. So I'm going to start off by coming over here to section 1. Click on this gear icon and go into advanced, CSS ID and classes. And on CSS ID, this needs to be 1 because this is corresponding with our anchor link. Okay, so you want to do the rest of them. So just do section 2, 3, and 4. Click on this gear icon, advanced, ID and classes, and this one here is 2. Save that, and so on. So now that we have all our CSS IDs all set, it's time now to test and see if this design is going to work. Okay, so I'm now on my page here, so I'm going to start scrolling now. So as you can see, my counter there is working, and this design is pretty much going in line with the steps. Now it's step number 3, and then finally we have step number 4. Okay, so this is working really well. Give it a try, see how it works out for you. So there you have it. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and do follow us on our social media platforms. By doing so, you'll be notified every time we release new tutorials. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.